Good evening. The Design Review Board 2 public meeting of November 20th, 2008 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrates all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on any specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by calling our DRB hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ca.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within either 7 or 15 calendar days of the DRB decision, depending on the application. The case planner will announce the length of the appeal period with each case. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. This will be roll call. Mr. Carter?
Here.
Ms. Friedman? Absent. Mr. Garagos?
Here.
Mr. Malikian?
Here.
Mr. Zarifian? Also absent. Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on November 13, 2008. Oral communications. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on an item not a part of the agenda?
We don't have any cards.
No cards? Okay. Seeing none, we're on to the review calendar. Staff does not have any staff announcements at this time, and there is nothing on the consent calendar, so we can go on to our regular calendar.
Okay, so item number 1, 2 PDR 2008-047-B. It's a continuation. And Mr. Nazarian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As mentioned, the next case number is 2 PDR 2008-047-B, located at 228 Irving Avenue. The proposal is to add 665 square feet to the first floor and 1,109 square feet to the second floor of the existing single-family house. It also includes some exterior renovations. This project was last heard on October 23, 2008, and was returned for redesign with comments and conditions. The comments made by the board were the following. Provide a calculation showing the percentage of the exterior wall area and the roof area proposed to be removed. Actually, in the staff report, you will see that it says 65% of the walls will be remaining, but there was a miscalculation done, and I will let the applicant address this issue, and he will explain exactly how many percent of the existing walls and roof will be remaining. If possible, lower and/or widen the chimney to make it more proportionate. The height of the chimney has been lowered to make it proportionate with the existing one-story living room, as you can see it on the plans. Number 3, choose a style and make sure the details such as window style, front door, railing, siding, garage door are consistent with the style. The balcony railing has been revised, and hardy board siding has been added to the first floor of the house to meet this condition, and the style of the house, staff has sort of identified it to be minimal traditional. If divided lights are appropriate for the chosen style, look into the proportions and numbers of muttons, provide external muttons and details for the exterior treatment of the windows. The windows will be having external muttons, and it will be of wood with exterior aluminum clad, and it would be of white color with wood trim around it. The muttons are appropriate for the minimal traditional style and provide a sense of texture and quality. 5. Add an element on top of the front entry if appropriate to the chosen style. A circular element, as you can see on the new plans behind you, has been added on top of above the entry piece to meet this condition. And 6, re-examine the relationship between the planes of the front door and garage door. A new elevation, the new elevation showed that the garage door has been centered, moved away from the entry to make it more symmetrical in order to meet this condition. And there was also a consideration made by the board to add shutters on the front elevation, second floor front elevation windows. Applicant has added shutters to the small windows of the second floor of the front elevation. Staff recommends an approval of the proposed project with conditions which will make the project more consistent with the minimal traditional style. The conditions are: staff recommends that shutters be added to the windows on front elevation above the garage as well. Extend out the eave of the first floor on the front elevation. Provide siding on the gables, as it is typical of minimal traditional style. Lower the siding around the house to the sill level. Consider additional articulation at the west elevation to better respond to the adjacent one-story residences. And lastly, work with planning staff to meet all the conditions prior to obtaining building permits. And analysis. The proposed two-story addition is similar to the ground floor footprint, which will be increased by about 800 square feet. The proposed site plan is consistent with the existing neighborhood and appears to be appropriate for the site. The second-story addition appears to be sufficiently set back at the front and rear. The overall size, height, mass, and scale are appropriate to the site and fits well within the neighborhood. However, because of the property adjacent is one story to the west, the staff recommends the consideration of additional articulation on that west elevation. And lastly, the proposed design is comprised of high-quality materials, colors, and details which appear to provide consistency with the minimal traditional style and is consistent with the colors and materials of the existing house. That concludes my
I have a
presentation.
question.
Yes.
The second item on the analysis, you're saying, you're talking about the adjacent property being one story. Wouldn't that be a part of the recommendation under the conditions,
It is.
or part of the consideration by staff?
It is.
How do
It would
we-
be initially. Actually, what happened during the first hearing, staff had recommended a condition. Board did not respond to it, so now we're asking you to consider it as a condition. And it's
Because that's a
entirely up to the board.
substantial little comment there. So,
So it's-
Yes, because we had, when we initially analyzed the project for it to go before you the first time, we had found that some modest articulation in that plane would be necessary to just activate that elevation. The elevation on the other three sides we thought were appropriate, but because we did report that out at the first hearing, we thought perhaps the board had overlooked it. We chose to repeat that comment, even though it may in fact not be important to this board, but because we had highlighted that in the first hearing, we thought to carry that over to just represent that. Thank you.
all right, thank you. We have cards. Ronnie Levy.
Yeah, good evening. Ronnie Levy, Studio by Design, designer representing Mr. Larry Brent. In addition to what Gevorg just said, I would like to clarify a few things. The only thing that Gevorg missed on what we changed on the from previous design to the new design is the wrought iron railing at the balcony at the back used to be horizontal and now they are vertical to make it look more like traditional other than modern. All the other changes mentioned were exact, and I don't know if I want to comment more than said. I couldn't follow because you were reading too fast all the other recommendations that were not known to me. I managed to pick up the windows over the garage, adding shutters. That I don't see any problem with that. I do have a problem with the additional articulation on the west side. I mean, this is a second-story addition, and eventually down the road, neighbors will want to do the same thing. They will be now two-story, and we will be the reference, and they don't have to relate to us because we are second story, but we are to them. I don't feel it's even a justification for additional articulation on the west side, because we have the same situation on the east side, and we do have a two-story wall facing the east side as well. So for me, it's like the same things, and to articulate the building more and push it in will harm and damage the layout inside, and will have to be redesigned again. I think it's a major thing that I'm objecting. I don't think it's necessary. Open this to questions.
All right. Do we have any
You
questions?
had an analysis of the 50%?
Oh, yeah. I actually did on Gaylord. So, sorry about that. It was just confusion about the way it should be done, but after reviewing it carefully, we found out, start with the roof. The existing roof, I took it straight from the size of the existing building and existing garage. The existing building is 1,069 square feet. Existing garage is 277. Altogether is 1,346 square feet. We calculate remaining roof mainly on the left front portion of the house for 496 square feet. The remaining, I'm sorry, so 496 is what's remaining of the roof over the 1,346. We're looking at the perimeter walls of the existing house. I'll calculated 1,424 lineal feet. Sorry, 178 lineal feet times 8 feet height is 1,424 square feet. Most of the walls remaining, the one that are being removed, is 59 lineal feet times 8 is 472. So if we're taking the remaining of the walls and the remaining of the roofs, we are actually under by 40 square feet.
You said your total is 1,000. How much?
The total square feet of all the perimeter walls is 1,424. And the total size of the roof.
424. And your overall roof is 1,346.
Yes.
So your total is 2,770.
Yeah.
70, right?
So half of it needs to be 1,386. That's 50%. So after adding the remaining roof and the remaining walls, we end up with 1,348, missing 40.
So you just said 500 is remaining and 472 is remaining from
No.
the
I'm sorry. The 472 is
the walls that are remaining.
Is on the
Actually,
walls.
472 would
the
be
472
the
figure is the removed.
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 So 472 is removed, and then 500 square feet is removed.
Is
From-
remain on the roof. I'm sorry. Yeah, I kind of like flipped it, but
So it's
And you had 1,000 feet, that's 1,400.
so
You had 1,396, and you took off how much for the garage?
1396 plus 952, which is the remaining of the walls. That's 1348.
The remaining for the roof would be 850 square feet. The part that will be removed.
okay.
No,
You
well,
gu- you guys
the remaining is like 900.
Uh,
He said it was 400 off of that.
on
400
the
off
roof,
1396.
I just did a quick calculation with the calculator.
Okay, so it's 1346
Minus
minus
496, that will be staying, so the removed portion would be 850 square feet.
850, okay.
If you want, you can borrow my calculator, by the way.
No, it's, I didn't, the numbers are going fast and furious. If you're comfortable with the numbers, if it has been reviewed.
Actually, I would like to suggest a condition of approval. As the applicant himself just admitted, even with our calculations here, he falls just short of 50% being retained, which he indicated could be made up by retaining an additional portion of the existing exterior wall that now passes through what is planned to be a laundry room. So I would like to add a condition of approval that would read, retain 50% of the area of exterior wall and roof by retaining the existing exterior wall in the proposed laundry room and making other necessary corrections. And we believe that it's, with one minor correction, this can be met. I would like to put that language of making other necessary corrections just in case the final
Just to-
calculations come out slightly differently.
Just to clarify what it's saying, on your site plan, it's saying new slope 3 and 12 over the living room. Is that a new slope? Which means it's new framing. Is that true or not true?
No, that's meant to be existing roof to remain.
Okay, so we should clarify that, right? Okay.
Okay. We need to move on. Larry Brent?
Hi. My name is Larry Brent. I wanted to just basically let you know in advance that I'm willing to do whatever it's going to take, working with the contractor and my architect to get this job done. I had a fire on my 1-month anniversary on January 29th. And basically everything that I own was burned or damaged beyond repair. And it's been a definite transition. I've been in transition for the past 10 months. And, there's been some difficulty just recently with the insurance company. They've cut off my additional living expenses because there's a proposed time to do the job, not taking in consideration, to do a remodel of the house. It's, basically with codes to be built back exactly the same way. And so, basically, I just want you to know I'm willing to do whatever it's going to take to be able to start construction of the house, vary the plans, recommendations, whatever it takes, because I'm personally in jeopardy of losing the house because of the situation of I have, me and my wife, basically, this was a challenge to even buy the house in the beginning. And so now the horses, because we can't afford to board the 2 horses, they're back in the backyard, and we're renting a place right now. And so for me, this means not only an approval of a house, this is me actually being able to get my marriage and my life back on track. And so I just want you to know whatever it takes, as far as modifications, if I can get approval, I'm just more than willing to do. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Okay, public session is closed. Anyone wants to start?
Well, I'll start because I'm going to be brief. This is a project that was before us before, and went away with conditions. And so I guess as these things comes back, you have to get your checklist out to see if those conditions were met. So we can talk, and then I guess we can keep score. I'm good.
Okay. Well, then I guess we could just go down the list. I think
Okay.
I wish some of the stuff I know you were in a hurry to get back submitted, but I wish you had reviewed what we talked about before so that this would be a little bit easier. So I was hoping you would do that. But anyway, like we were talking about before, in terms of picking a style, that we would that you would take the opportunity to pick one of those and do things according to like the windows. So if you want to make a checklist of stuff, I don't know what the board's intent is. We could start making a checklist of stuff, maybe conditionally approve. I don't know what the feeling is, what you want to do.
Well, I guess staff has presented that they have met these conditions. Let's see. Do we agree with that?
Well, I don't agree they met, so I
Okay.
was going to make a list of stuff that I
Well,
could
I
probably
think-
be comfortable conditionally approve it if the board was.
I think out of all the items that we mentioned, number 3 would be the one that I would say that they were not able to meet that. But having said that, original submittal was being proposed as a Tuscan Mediterranean, which we didn't think that they were actually going towards that direction. So I think I agree with the staff that, or the applicant, that now it's more of a minimal traditional style. So I think by adding that siding and removing the stone, and I think that definitely help the situation, and I think it works really towards the benefit of the overall design. I think they've cleaned up the building personally. I don't have a problem with, I think it's an interesting set point for the siding height, so if it needs to get lowered to the sill height, I have no problem with it. I'm afraid that it may just become a lot more boxier, and I think to address one of the conditions as far as the west side, having that siding, it gives some texture relief on that large facade there. So I think it definitely helps that situation of scaling down the building itself rather than pushing the building in or out and creating some cavities in the facade. So I think in overall, I have no problem with it. I think windows, they're fine. I mean, the direction that they've taken. Some little details they've added, over the entry door. The stone, I'm not really crazy about, that they still maintain at the entry, but, it's something that, we can talk about. But in overall, I think it's they've added some little things here and there that I think overall to me it's fine. I think they've lowered that chimney. I think it definitely helped, just overpowering that condition. And I do agree. I like the railing much better now. I think it was just too modern for the house, whereas now it's more traditional. And that's where I am. I don't think it's that big of a,
No, I don't think it's a
I
problem.
think they've taken it in the right direction.
Yeah.
So.
I was only saying a few things that just...
Yeah, if you want to go ahead
knock
and
off
just...
a few, you guys can tell me whether you think they're valid or not. That's fine. I think you should probably get rid of the stone on the entry. Probably do that. I mentioned before about doing an XOX on a living room window, which I think it would help it feel like it's a living room window. So maybe do an XOX with a sort of a picture window in the center.
Can you clarify that, please?
XOX, the small side lights with a larger...
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Sorry.
So with the picture window in the middle and...
Side lights, yeah. Sorry about that.
Or side lights or casement, open.
Casements, yeah. Casement. And then it looks like there's shutters on those upper windows on the second floor, which look kind of funny with those awning windows. I would probably recommend taking those shutters off.
And putting them
on the ones over the garage door.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then I was noticing that, I guess it's his existing roof, so we won't say that. On the back, he's got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 vertical lights, which I think is a little bit much. So on those back uppers, if we took those to more like an 8 light, it would be 4 high on the
Are you
back.
talking about the doors?
The doors upstairs, yeah. And then the one downstairs, again, would be a 8 light rather than a 5 light. And then,
Meaning a 4 light. When you say 8 light.
it's actually 8 lights in the pane.
Oh, in the
panel,
panel. So it's pane. Yeah.
And then, same thing with the west elevation, those are, looks like they're pair of 4 lights, they should really be like 8 light, so, on those. And then if they can show maybe some kind of cap detail on the little pilasters on the balcony, just some little cap detail for the sections of wall that come up. And I know the framing is coming up that high for the garage. I'd actually probably maybe recommend a taller garage door rather than the 7-foot maybe. Maybe just take it a little bit higher, might help.
So would that be a consideration?
A consideration.
Even put some clear stories there. Right.
Yeah, something of it, just to break it up. Yeah, and with that, I think it's fine. And then maybe contrasting in the gable, I think we talked about that before, above the room above the garage. Across, just putting siding up and the contrasting siding up in the gable.
work, did you understand what he was saying?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd actually like to clarify. On the rear elevation, the number of lights on the top, on the second floor, the French doors, are you suggesting there should be fewer lights?
There should be fewer lights.
Fewer lights. And the same for the window and doors below? Fewer
Yes.
lights. Okay.
Fewer lights.
The window's fine, the doors are the ones. I
Yeah.
think the window's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so that the
They're going-
doors
they're going
don't need
7.
lights in the center? Is that what we're saying on the ground floor?
I would probably be fine with no dividers on it.
With no lights on the doors, but lights on the side lights?
Yeah, but they
Okay.
shouldn't be a horizontal pane, they should be a vertical pane.
Gotcha.
The side light, rather than being a 5 light, would be a 10 light. Would be 2s, 5 rows of 2.
Okay.
5, yeah.
And then raise the height of the garage door, remove the shutters where they are currently, and put them over top of at the windows over top of the garage.
Yes.
And then the last comment about siding in the gable, that would be at the north and west and east elevations consistently.
Yes.
And then staff had a recommendation to do that, but also to lower the siding. Did we hear that the siding on the ground floor should remain for the total ground floor in order to break up the massing and not to lower the siding to the sill height? Or what is the pleasure of the board on that point?
I personally don't have a issue with the height that they have. I think it just divides the.
Okay, and then
Money's okay, sorry.
so leaving the siding where it is, adding siding to the right underneath the gable, and remove the stone at the entry. And would you recommend stucco or plaster at that entry to contrast with the siding, or is it the applicant's choice?
That's a good question.
This is interesting because the applicant probably, you said, what do we do at the entryway here? And opted for a stone finish. So, it
know
looks busy.
I think truly, if I would do anything there, I would probably bring the stone at certain height and then just continue.
Yeah, the siding above.
Siding
Yeah,
above that.
that's what I was just going to say.
So I would, and rather than using river rocks or any type of stone like that, I would just more of
Ledger stone,
ledger
horizontal.
stone, horizontal. So I think that would be the.
Was that ledger stone to? I'm sorry. To
Probably a
Window height.
window height.
okay, to like a window sill height, and then siding above that,
Yes.
so that the whole ground floor is consistently
Right.
siding, except for the ledger stone at the entry.
Right.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And maybe if consideration to go ahead and just wrap the front with a stone base, possibly, consideration.
And if that were to be considered, it would be on the front elevation, and then it would need to wrap around the sides and stop at some logical location.
3-4 feet back,
Great.
nothing too bad.
Thank you.
But that's a consideration.
Consideration,
Consideration potentially where the first window starts, or
yeah.
so
There
forth.
was one more condition mentioned by Mr. Garagos about adding cap details on the pilasters.
In the back for
For
the
the wall.
handrail, for the guardrail.
Okay.
The little
Was that
sections of wall.
was that
that
a
come up.
condition or a concern?
It should be a condition, and I'd have some kind of cap.
Right here.
Yeah. Some kind of cap to it.
Okay.
Finish it off.
And also the XOX windows, I didn't hear either.
I was going to mention that.
Okay, okay.
Would
Yeah,
you
I
like
would-
to make that a
I'd
condition?
like that a condition, yeah.
Okay. And we will also probably add the condition that Mr. Foy mentioned about the 50% rule, that in order to maintain 50% or more of the existing roof and wall area, they will have to retain the existing wall that is to be running through the proposed laundry keep that wall so they will be over 50%.
Yes, and make any other necessary corrections.
Okay. So, is there a motion?
Well, then I would move approval of case 2 PDR 2008-047B with the conditions enumerated.
Second motion?
Okay, so we have a motion made by Mr. Carter, second by Mr. Gergos. This will be a roll call. Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Gergos?
Yes.
Chairman Malikian?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready for the next one? Or? Mr. Baxter.
Here.
Good luck.
Huh?
All right, so the next one, 2 PDR 2008-038A.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, as project located at 1434 Corona, which is in southeast Glendale, the Adamsville neighborhood. It's on a vacant lot. The applicant is proposing to construct a 3,300 square foot house and a two-car garage. The a CUP was approved for the lot in July to allow a house to be constructed on the site. And now they're coming in for their design review. The overall slope for the site is about 44%. Footprint area of the house is about 54%. The applicant's allowed to have a 3-story house in that area when you have that type of a steep slope, anything over 40%. So they're able to do that. Now, as far as the existing property, there was a, in fact, maybe the photographs, let me just show you these. And you can see over here we have an aerial view. We have an aerial view here of the site, the vacant site right here. There's a bit of a pad right here, and though you can't see it, there's a retaining wall. But there's a retaining wall over there. And back in the 60s, there was a proposal to construct on the site a new house, but it expired. And so, but they did build a retaining wall shortly thereafter. But nothing has come since then as far as permits in the city. No construction on the site beyond that. As I mentioned, it's in the Adams Hill neighborhood, which is a neighborhood that reflects many numerous architectural styles and building trends from the 20s to the present time. Homes tend to be built kind of close together. That is noted in your staff report, which I'm going. A quick survey of the neighborhood. About 63% of the homes are 2 stories, and about 26% are 3-story homes. This particular lot is the largest lot in the survey area that was submitted and reviewed by the applicant. There are several categories, as you know, in our comparison of the neighborhoods and of the site. Under the site planning category, we have subsections of lot coverage, landscaping, parking, retaining walls, and privacy issues, and the staff felt that this proposal is fairly consistent with the intent of the guidelines and the overall neighborhood character. In the category of mass and scale, I'd like to bring up at least a couple of points here. It's a little bit, of course, it's a little bit more apparent. You can see the mass and scale primarily from the elevation view from the street. From the side views, you can see how the mass terraces up the hill, which is consistent with our guidelines back from 1993. We've been looking at the same sort of issue right here, and that's a fairly realistic impression of how this house will look. The garage, and this is where this height issue comes in, we have a garage at the bottom of the hill And you can see there's a little tunnel area here that goes back along the garage, and you can either go through the garage door or up or around the corner, and you go to an elevator, and that will take you up into the house. And you can see there, pretty ominous, but it's all subterranean construction, or at least will be buried after they excavate to construct it. Now, one of the points that was brought up by the neighbors, and it's a legitimate issue, is whether the garage is attached or not attached, and it is an attached garage. But where that makes a difference is the overall height of the building, because if it is attached, it would be measured from this point. If this area here was totally exposed at the time of construction, prior to it being excavated, and I handed out to the applicant, to the neighbors, and to yourselves that definition of height. There is that section of the code that allows for doors and openings that are carved out of the hill, and the only thing exposed to be located as they are and not to be counted as height, definition of height. So in this particular case, the height of the building will be up at the top, and it begins closer to this area, which we can see is fairly consistent with that area up there. So the house is about 33 feet in height. See that up on that plate. As far as setbacks go, the neighborhood key notes that there's a large range of setbacks in this neighborhood, all throughout Adams Hill. A lot of homes are built, or garages are built right up to the street. This particular property, the garage is set back, I believe it's 33 feet from the street, and the house is set back further from there. So the overall setback is about 72 square feet to the face of the building. And to the face of the garage, as I mentioned, is 33 feet. You can see how the driveway begins at the corner over here in the, I guess it'd be closest to the south end of the property, and then traverses across and enters over on the north side over there. In general, in our summary for this area, the mass and scale, we felt that the house also fit pretty well within the character of the neighborhood and within the design guidelines and hillside design guidelines. On the architectural style of the building, which is our last category, building design and detailing, the house's design, we felt overall, which is kind of a Spanish colonial revival style, as identified by the applicant, and staff will say that it reflects that look. Be consistent internally in terms of all the elements working together to create an attractive form. We feel that it will be complementary to the neighborhood and consistent with the intent of the guidelines. Now, the staff did make some recommendations for materials, and we noted that in our conditions down below, so I'm kind of jumping a little bit since the materials, which is another part of that building design, which is that last category, talked about we had some concerns with the retaining walls, stair walls, house foundation walls, and the decorative material that would be used. The applicant did submit some materials for you to look at, and they can go into more detail on their intent. We also had some concerns with the railings. We're looking for a little bit more consistency, primarily with the metal railings. We have some metal railings that are straight and some that are more decorative. Wanted to work with the applicant on that. And then showing the downspouts. What we didn't want was to have downspouts snaking across the front facade of the building. Now, one of the things the staff wanted to discuss in our comments is that we've met several times with the applicant, and the applicant would be able to discuss this with you also. And we've worked from a position of providing guidance for the applicants on arriving at a project that looks like this here where the staff felt that we could support it. In a little packet that you have with some design information, you will find, in fact, Mr. Malikian is holding up a copy. Sir, if I could just hold this for a second, I'm sorry. This was one of the examples that was shown by the applicant to the staff, saying, you know, we like this kind of look. We'd like to kind of replicate something like this on the hill. What do you think? And then from there, it became a basis for a discussion to where we arrived at this project. That pretty much sums up my comments at this time. I'll answer questions. The applicant's here. Neighbors are here. Speaking of neighbors, we have about 12 letters, as you probably noted, that were submitted. I believe 10 or so were in opposition, and a couple of them were in support. Yes, sir.
I just have a question on the height issue.
Yes, sir.
If the garage is cut into the hill, as that pushes, so it doesn't count as height, if the house came down and actually was near that door, at what point do you then count the low part of the building then?
Same thing. See, the whole, that's a good point. Mr. Chair, members of the board, let's say they just took this whole volume and just shifted it down here. The same concept, because this garage is completely buried. And it's buried not only sideways, but technically, which we'll be reviewing with the applicant, it's also buried across the whole front. So in other words, he can't come through and just say, oh, well, this portion only is buried. This portion here is exposed. No, this whole front has to be buried all the way in, and you just carve it out.
Where's your low datum point then? When do you actually consider bottom in terms of height?
It'd be the same concept as this, sir.
Still is that? Okay.
Yeah. Let's say we just get rid of all this shaft. It looks pretty ominous, you know, the detail here.
Right.
Let's just get rid of that detail, and let's just stop with the garage here. Get rid of that, and just get rid of that, other than maybe foundation walls, and just shift the whole thing down like this. It actually could. Here's the thing. Okay, we'll even go further. We'll just set this whole house right on top of the garage.
That was my point. That was my question.
Let's just take this house and set it right there on the garage. Where's the height begin?
Yeah.
It doesn't begin here. And the reason is because this is buried. It would begin at this point right here. Or it gets
Existing
right there.
grade.
Well, when
Yeah,
you say buried, again, now that I'm confused, I thought I understood when you explained to me before we started, but when you say buried, it's open in front of it. I mean,
That's
it's
correct.
visible from the
Do
front.
I have that?
so it's
May I
not-
look at that definition?
Yeah.
If I get handed out to you, because I know.
I mean, the entire
It's a time of
being
construction.
removed here. So this entire hill is removed. So this is all open. The only thing is buried on this side and this side on the map. But now that you're saying that you attach it,
Oh, well, see, we see this. I tell you what we see. We see what you're describing most of the time. We see this kind of a detachment or a feel of detachment. This has a feel of detachment, where in reality it is attached. And it's an excellent point that the neighbor brought up and kind of pushed us to look at it. And the more we look at it, I'd actually work out in the applicant's favor, and he can go into detail and say how we got to that point if he needs. But most of the time, we see this volume brought right down here. And it's sitting here right on this hill, and it's attached to the house, and you just have stairs going up inside. But this portion, and here's this definition of height, and if you'll bear with me, we'll go through it. So height means the vertical dimension from the lowest point of the building. So, okay, let's just start off right here. This is the lowest point of the building, right here. Or right here, okay? Exposed above the ground surface, there it is, you can see it exposed above the ground surface, to the highest point of the roof. The highest point of the roof, right up here. A little pointer. Here's your highest point of the roof. Except as may be shown in diagrams, and that's some height stuff there. All right, what about exclusions? Well, the code is full of these things. Chimneys, vents, utility service structures, or portions of a building located below the ground surface existing at the time of construction and exposed as a result of excavation to create door, window, or ventilation openings shall not be included in the measurement of vertical dimensions.
So anything below grade at the time of construction?
No, at the time of construction. So if this is accurate, and Mr. Gobian is probably one of the premier hillside guys around here, so he knows what he's doing on all these things. Showing this under grade, this is underneath. This door is being exposed. This opening here is being exposed as a result of excavation. And there you have it. Okay?
Chris, I have just a question, and I don't for a moment want to upstage the letters that have come in for and against the project, but just my preliminary look at the letters, the homeowners that are in opposition all cite Adams Hill area as more conservatively sized houses,
Yes.
and they point to this one as a very large house.
Yes, sir.
Could it be characterized that way?
All right, well, let's look at our staff report real quick, and we'll go do a little look at that. On page 2, one of the questions that we have we have 2 points, really, house size and floor area ratio. So the house size, we have a range from just, let's say, 1,400 square feet to about 36,500 square feet. That's the range of homes in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
But the average is about 2,200, 22 and a half, okay? This particular house would be 36 and a half. Excuse me, 33 and a half. So is an extra 1,000 square feet, is that considered to be substantial? And that would be, for staff's point of view, in fact, I think in the planning department, a house size is less of an issue for us than how does the house feel. Does the house feel that it is massive, announcing itself, primary importance, the rest of you guys are losers on the block? That's a big issue. If you can make a house feel that it fits with the character, it could have a pretty substantial floor area. So staff felt that the house overall, because of the design features and the way it works in the topography, is meeting that characteristic. And plus, being set further back up is kind of pushed away from the street. So it sort of takes it away from the presence right on the street. Okay, well, we have people who disagree.
And thank you. And for those of you keeping score at home, just remember that this board up here, under the new design review guidelines, we're not heavily dependent, but we give great weight to staff's thoughts and recommendations as far as massing go. And that, believe me, as a veteran of these wars, that doesn't completely sway my judgment, but it is a factor.
All right, sir. Any more questions I can?
Just one other, if somebody on staff could address something else that came up in the letters about what city council has said in terms of possible, are we bound by any of those?
No.
Okay.
No, not, you're bound by what the code is in effect at the time.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Hagopian?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the board members. My name is Edward Hagopian. I am the architect of this project. My address is 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. First, let me go through some numbers here. I don't know if you have the copy of the size of the houses in that neighborhood. I have categorized them in the size and the floor area ratio and the lot coverage. The biggest house in this neighborhood is 3,658 square feet. That's number one. Number two is 3,536 square foot. Number three is 3,518 square foot. Number four is 3,355 square foot, and we are number 5 in that category. Now, for the floor area ratio, we have 61%, 58%, and it goes on and on we are number 14 for the floor area ratio. For the lot coverage, we have 46%, we have 38%, we have 30%, and we are number 7 floor lot coverage-wise. These are the numbers that shows that not only we are not the biggest house, we are by far smaller than existing houses right in that 300-foot linear foot distance. Now, if we go through the other numbers, like landscaping, we have the 61%, I believe, landscaping, and most of this landscaping is exposed to public. I have designed a lot of hillside houses, and most of my client didn't want to go through this expensive kind of construction that we have the garage in the front and the houses in the back, and between these two, the whole landscaping is exposed to the street, and this is a big plus for this house, especially when the house is that far in the property. You gentlemen are architect, and you know when something goes far, it becomes small in the perspective. So not only most of this house is tucked underneath the dirt, but also is far from the street, exposing that very beautiful landscaping to the public. Of course, in the meantime, we have a long driveway that, as you see in that chart, we have houses that they have a setback of 4 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, which is a big problem when they want to back up from their garage to the street, or if they have a guest, there's no space for their parking. This house has that kind of distance that people can park, guests can park, and that is a big plus for this house. Now, going to the architecture of this project. In the very beginning, we started this almost about a year ago. We had several meetings with the owners. We were very careful to choose the location of this house. We walked to the site, we climbed that hillside several times, and we looked around, and we saw the house on the left side, which I have designed, and that house is right in the street, and that there is no landscape exposed as this one is to the public. And the house on the right side, on the back side, which you have a photo of it, and you can see this picture here, and also this photo here. The house on the right side is 2-story exposed. Everything is exposed. It's nothing like this, like it's inside the dirt. And if you look in the survey that we have on right side there, you will see that the first floor of that, may I come close to show that? In this house here, I am reading the elevations that is done by a licensed surveyor, 585. Now, the top of the highest point that we have here is 15 feet lower than this backyard or side yard or whatever you name it. So, by comparing the house on the left side and the right side, we decided to design our site in a way that is giving the best features, I mean the landscaping, the distance, the depth. By doing that, I believe this is one of the best projects that I have ever designed in City of Glendale. During this long time of several months, we had several. My time is expired.
Your time is expired, so if you can you have another minute to continue.
Okay, we had several meetings with the staffs in the city, and we have gone through a lot of changes and massaging and different options, we made like maybe 3 colored elevations renderings to see which one is what, and we ended up with this version, which I believe it's authentic, and beside what you see on those pictures, we are trying to use even further more detailed, artistic materials to enhance the quality and the originality of this Spanish-style house. The owner is willing to to spend the money, which I appreciate that. Not everybody wants to do that. Some people, they want to make it as less expensive as possible, but this one will be, I believe this will be an addition to that neighborhood. I hope and I wish that the neighbors, instead of objecting, they will appreciate what we are trying to do here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for the architect? Okay, thank you. Deborah Ackerman, I'm sorry.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Ackerman, and I've lived at 1431 Stanford Drive on Adams Hill for the past 7 years, and I've also worked in Glendale for the past 14 years. I've also had experience working with the planning department because I did an addition to my existing house, so I sort of had a little dry run, working with everybody in the planning department. My fiance and I designed the basic layout of this home ourselves, and we started by getting a survey of the property and downloading Glendale's hillside ordinance, and we did a lot of math, and we even had a foam model cut, exactly laser cut to the so it matched the survey, so we knew exactly what the mass of the lot was. And we did all this to try to identify what type of a home that we could build. We spent all of our evening hours planning and sketching and most of our weekends on the property. And then based on this foam model, we even laid out pieces of lumber to help us visualize and calculate the kind of dwelling that we could build. We hired a draftsman to translate everything to scale, and then we took our drawings to the first architect that we hired. After several months of getting slightly different versions of a big box, we had to abandon that relationship. The second architect we went to was very happy to follow the drawings we had, but he had no experience with the city of Glendale or with the types of building and hillside codes that we have here. So several months and several thousands of dollars later, at our insistence, he made a trip to the Glendale Planning Department help desk. And about a week later, he resigned. So our neighbor's house was designed by Mr. Hagobian, whom we had actually contacted between the first architect and the second architect. But Edward was very busy at the time. But we knocked on Mr. Hagobian's door again and asked him to please help us and take on our project, and thankfully he said yes this time. Mr. Hagobian was able to translate what we wanted, a home with old world character and charm, which is stepped up the hillside to take advantage of really spectacular views, and to do so within all of Glendale's many codes and regulations. I will be forever grateful to him for his very precise knowledge and his experience over the years building in Glendale. We were also helped enormously by the Glendale building staff, by Brad Collin, by Stephanie Reich, and Chris Baxter has really, really bent over backwards to explain different things to us and help us, do the right thing with our project. I really love Glendale, and I'm very glad that everyone cares so much about keeping Glendale the treasure that it is. I want everyone who has the good fortune of being able to own a home here to feel like their neighborhood will be protected from anything that's inappropriate or high-density dwellings or that may create traffic or aggressive development that would detract from the character of Glendale. So we've seen so many improvements in the Adams Hill area that it's really become a great place to live, and we're excited about building our home there. I just wanted to say a little something about where the dwelling is located.
You need to wrap up, so if you
Okay,
can do that.
very quickly, I just have another paragraph here. The dwelling is stepped further back from the street and higher up than our neighbor to the north, and the third floor roof ridge is actually 15 feet lower and 50 feet forward from that highest property that is noted on there. So it really is centered between the two properties, both in elevation and in depth. And I think it, with the colors that we've chosen to sort of blend with the landscape, I think it'll look like it's been there forever. That's what our intent is. There are some additional pictures. I wanted to say that there's a picture of a beautiful Spanish Revival home there. That's actually on the corner of the street that no, that's the inspiration picture. There's another two pictures that look like they're identical. Right there, yeah. Yeah, that's on the corner of where I live now, Stanford and Berkeley. And so every time that I make that turn, I can see our property. So when I took that picture, I just turned 45 degrees and took a picture of our lot there. And if you look on the next page, I walked another 30 feet down. If you turn that page to the next one, I walked another 30 feet down, so I was standing further in front of that. I turned again to take a picture of the lot, and you can see that it disappears. So in Adams Hill, there's sort of that quality of little hidden treasures, homes that are special, homes that people may not even see if they don't, even if they live on our same street. There's people who will drive by, and because of the foliage and the way our house is placed, they won't see us, but maybe someone in the mini park on Adams Hill will have a nice long view of the house. So also, I don't think anyone on our street ever complains about how beautiful that Spanish home is, and that's close to 4,000 square feet. And anyway, I want to thank you very much for your consideration, and we look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you. Norman Decker?
My name is Norman E. Decker. I live at 1252 Scenic Drive. And as you can see from the map up there, I can show you the location of my house and the location of this proposed house. One of the things that I would hope could be clarified before we get going and before I use up my 3 minutes is this reference on this height. It states that ground surface existing at the time of construction and exposed as a result of excavation to create door, window, or ventilation. Now, does that mean that the portion?
Well, you need to speak in the mic, but
But I want to show you what I'm talking about. This
you can
portion
come
here.
up. You can come up, but you need to speak here.
Is this existing now?
No.
So that, then that height,
What we're being told is that this natural grade is existing.
okay, but in that height description, that exemption, it says that it has to be existing at the time of construction. And is the
The
tunnel?
natural grade needs to be existing. Am I correct? Or
I don't think so. Read that.
Yes, sir. Oh, yes, I'm okay.
Could you read it to them?
Yes.
What I'm talking about?
It
It says
says
that it existing at the time.
The ground surface.
ground surface existing at the time of construction and exposed as a result of excavation to create the doors.
Okay, to create doors.
Yes.
It's the
So what
ground
you're
level
saying,
portion.
though, is you're saying there's a portion of it, you have a concern that a portion of it is being filled in as opposed to being excavated. Is that your
Well, what I'm
concern?
concerned about is the tunnel itself, pushing the house all the way back up on the hill. We've got a situation up there where there's no fire access to the top part of that house. The only fire access is at the street level. And with the fires that we've been having in recent times, and the fires we had on the hill when John Orr was around. It's quite a serious concern because that house is brought up, way up the hill, right up under our property. And if that house were to catch fire, the time that the fire department would drag up the hoses from the street, the thing could be well engulfed in a 3-story house, would be just like a torch for underneath my home. Now, I've lived on the hill for 52 years, and I've lived at this present site for 40. Well, I bought the property in 1960 and started construction at that time. Now, I own additional lots around there, and let me show it to you on the map, if I may.
We need to wrap up, so.
I understand.
Okay.
But
Let me move it so that you can see your lots here.
this is my home here.
Don't touch the screen because
I'm not
it'll,
touching it.
I know, but just to let you know, if you do, it'll mess it all up.
Okay,
Okay, we see your house.
all right. Now, you see the lot here.
Right.
You don't get the impression of the distance and the depth or the effect of where that house is located on this map. I can show you on the maps that I brought and that I included in the letters to you guys.
Here, let me
You
try
need to,
another
you
view.
need to step back and speak over there because they can't hear you on TV. So.
Did you receive my letter of the 20th?
We have.
Yes.
And as I say in the letter, I'm convinced that this house has an attached garage. Whether the exemption for height or otherwise makes any difference, I don't know. But I'm concerned as to the tunnel, where it's located, the elevator. The elevator is 75 feet up from the bottom. Is that right, or where does it show on the pictures of the house up there?
It's within the house itself.
It's within the house?
Yes, you
Is-
cannot see it.
Well, on that one drawing there, it shows
Well,
it on
that's
the-
part of the section, but it's within the dirt and it's beyond and it's in the house. So from exterior, you're not going to be able to see that.
All right, now the house is moved way back up on the lot, and as you said earlier, when you were considering the possibility of it being moved back down, is there any reason why it couldn't be moved back down somewhat? Because at present, there's a serious problem with privacy in my home, privacy on both neighbors, and also for the new house. Because according to the plans, I believe the master bedroom would be immediately into our house. And if it were moved down, somewhat down the hill, it would make a big difference. And I'm sorry, I'm not very proficient at this.
Okay?
It's okay. I have a question for Mr. Baker.
Please.
And staff can help me with this. Is this the property that the applicant was saying that the top of the roof is 15 feet below the pad of
Yes.
your property on Scenic? Does that jive with you?
I don't think so, because if you look at those two pictures there, you'll see the story poles, the photographs.
Mr. Chair, what I did was, if you go to if you look at the site plan, which is the upper left-hand plan exhibit that I have here, and the gentleman's house is in the bottom right-hand corner. And I took an elevation point right there.
There.
Yes, sir. Then what we did is, from that point, if you want to here, that's, if we go, let's say, 585.
Well, let's go with the concrete surface, so 583.
Okay,
So that's-
okay, 583. All right, and then we come over here. And, we want to find the overall height of the house.
Well, it says 568, but you got another.
That's right, so, okay, now this says 68, but I had say 72. 72.
to, at least
11 feet.
I can't
11
yeah, like
feet.
11. And I had some other information. I
It
had to wing
ranges.
it. I had to wing it here. It may not, this distance may not be that height, but
So it ranges between, Mr. Copeland said it was 15.
Right.
You know, you're coming up 11, so it's between 11 and 15 feet.
and then basically, and the thought that I was going through is because we see a lot of this, that if a person's sitting out here on a chair, the pad that his feet are on is 11 feet, let's say, in this particular case, 11 feet higher than the tallest point of the house below him. So, does it block his view? When you're,
Well, lower.
yeah, it's a lower. It's 11 feet lower than his pad, even if he were on a lawn chair laying out. I mean, it's just, I know that's, you get my idea that it's just 11 feet lower. There's a block of view, and I think we don't have a view protection, but we do have, in terms of just looking at it from how we see other projects, this is a fairly sensitive, considering the way we build homes in Glendale.
Any more questions?
One quick question.
Yes.
This map, I think you've got a copy of it there.
Okay, you can just leave it with us, and we need to.
I've got a copy of
We have
that.
a copy of
The
it.
point I was getting at is when you look at that, look at this map now, you get a better perspective. This is an aerial
Right.
view.
Right.
You get a perspective of where that property is. It's right there. And when you've got all of this property down here, that's going to require the fire protection, what have you. It's a real rhubarb.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Decker.
Thank you so much.
Margaret Hammond?
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Margaret Hammond. I'm a 50-year resident of that hill. I've lived there 50 years. I've seen many changes in it. And through those years, there were a lot of things we couldn't do about it because there was no ordinances to protect us, and the homes were unrestricted that they allowed to be built in there, which we all would say, oh my God, there's another Hilton going in. And that's just what happened to us. We went from being small and medium-sized homes to these massive homes because there was no way that we were protected. Once the hillside ordinance came in, then we were able to have some protection. And, as I say, I respect the fact that the staff's opinion is to be taken into consideration by the commission. But again, they don't live in Adams Hill. They don't know what has happened to our hill over those 50 years, that we've become what looks like, down in L.A., some of the areas down there, one house on top of the other. And these big homes have added to that feeling of just hanging over some of the smaller homes in the area. I can understand his thought about that home being up against his 15 feet away. All he's going to do from where he had a view or some greenery to look down on is a great big roof. That's all he's going to have for his view off his front porch, off his front of his house. I can understand very well. I don't understand why with that size of a lot, and this is my neighbors. They've all called me. That's why I'm here. Because some of them couldn't come, but they said they would write, and if I would come and express our thinking on this, that why this huge mass, where in other parts of Glendale, you look at this and say, well, we don't want that huge mass stuck away up there like it is above the college and above some of the other homes. They've stopped that. But here we are going to do it to us. Why? Why? That could be further down the hill. It would fit in closer to the, you wouldn't look up and see this big, huge thing away up. At least it would be partway down the hill and not be so sticking out like a sore thumb. We went through all these years of this unrestricted building and large homes and so forth. And that's one of the reasons that we feel it's time that Adams Hill got some justice or some, thinking along the lines of the people that live there, some respect for our thoughts of all the years that we've lived. I have people on my street that have lived there 75 and 80 years. And they definitely said to me, Margaret, we can't go. They're elderly, whatever. Would you please go? I said, yes, I will, and that's why I'm here. I want to speak for the residents, a lot of the residents of Adams Hill, and this is how we feel about these huge homes going in, stuck on top of the hill, up against other homes. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kopian, you have 2 minutes.
I'd like to just say one thing, and I think Edward might have one thing to say.
Well, I need, you have 2 minutes, so
1 minute?
between
Okay. 1
you
minute
two,
for
you
him,
have
1
1
minute
minute.
for him.
That's fine.
Okay. Our house is going to be 50 feet away from Mr. Decker's home, and then 11 to 15 feet lower. So it's not, we're not 15 feet away from his house. So that's a respectable distance, I think. And the other thing is, I think 8 of the 10 letters that were against my property were written by board members of the Adams Hill Homeowners Association, all of which I know them because I do participate in that association. So it wasn't like it was like all the residents. It was definitely a letter drive by the hillside activists.
Thank you.
Well, I don't have much to say. You gentlemen are expert on this, and I don't want to educate you. That house on the back, that elevation of 585, that's the front yard of it. The house itself is raised floor and is higher than that number. And the distance between that house, may I come close and show it?
Please.
The distance between the side. This is the house, and that is the roof of this house. And if this distance is 42 feet, that's almost double of that distance, which is close to 75 feet distance between these two houses. It's not 15 feet. However, I think the time has changed. It's not 1920s, 1930s. This house will be built with new features like fire sprinklers. We have a escapeway on the right side. We have steps there that will provide the fire department with that exit way. These plans have to go, as you know, through a very extensive plan check with regarding the zoning issues, fire issues, building issues, and if it's not done properly, it will not be approved by the city of Glendale.
Mr. Copeland, I have 2 questions. I don't know if you... Okay. My first question, before I even heard the neighbors or anybody, my first question was, what was the reasoning, or how did you determine the location of the house in relation to the slope of the land, being that both homes are very much lower than where this one is? So I understand the concept being that 72 feet back and you're much higher, but the vernacular of the site or the street, you have this, and then you're going to go back up. So I'm just wondering, what was the reasoning by you? I'm sure you've done many of these, so understanding what the thought process was, where to locate this building.
The location of the building, if you look into the elevation, that will explain to you that by having that setback, of course, this is not a perspective. If this was a perspective, you will see much smaller house and more.
And I do have the perspective.
Okay, you got the perspective.
Yeah, I do have.
Well, that perspective is not seen from the street. If it's from the street, you will see the 2 sidelines of the property line going in an angle. So this house will be set back far from the street and will be less intrusive into the space of the street. If you walk there and see the next door house, you will see how, of course, it's built according to the code, but it is blocking entire landscaping on the back. This is just the other way. This landscaping is in front of the house. It is serving a good purpose for the people walking in that street. What they will see is not...
So basically, the reason that we pushed it up to have more
Yes.
landscaping in the front. My next
Of course,
question...
in the meantime, sorry to interrupt you. Of course, in the meantime, has a better possibility of seeing the view from the higher elevation.
My second question is, explain to me, being that there's an existing driveway, that graded retaining wall and the driveway, and it's there, it's being substantially changed. Have you looked at the option of, rather than following the existing driveway, placing the garage right in front of the garage, or just putting it right in front of where you actually come in, and then creating the turnaround area right near it, so you have a lot more landscaping on one end rather than cutting the front of the entire property as being driveway? Have you looked at that option?
Yes. The elevation difference at that location, if you look at the survey, you will see that the contour lines are very close to each other. May I come close to
Sure,
show?
please.
You can see these contour lines here are very, very concentrated slope here.
Right.
And if we have to have 18-foot setback for the garage, as it is in the code, we end up with high retaining walls here that will be higher than the allowed maximum 7-foot in front setback or 5-foot.
Okay, so it's basically code-driven, because
Yeah.
you are substantially removing dirt from the other end also.
Yeah.
I mean,
By the way, I'm not following the existing driveway. Partially, maybe it's close to that, but it's not exactly the same thing.
okay, all right, those are the two questions. Thank you. Any more questions for you? Okay, well, we're going to close the public session.
Want to go to first?
It's
Well,
either one or the other.
One or the other? Okay. It's always difficult to see a new project come into a neighborhood. I can appreciate that. I think there are some things to keep in mind. I know the number always, people get fixated on the number, but it's really the massing and the effect that it has on the street or on the neighborhood. And I think when you look at the building, you're essentially, and there's a lot of positives to it. I like the fact that it's up the hill. If I was the neighbor, as you're looking at the front of the building, the neighbor to the left, I would like the fact that the house isn't down, so my side windows don't look at their side windows. So I find that a positive in terms of site planning. From a neighborhood standpoint, I think it's a positive that there is all that landscaping in front. Wouldn't it be nice to see a landscape hillside rather than a house? The fact that it is still lower than the neighbor adjacent, I think it's very nicely placed. I really do. I think it would be a positive, having done hillside houses before, and they're slammed right next to each other, and you're staring at everybody else's side of building. I don't see that as a positive, and I don't know why a neighbor would find that a positive. In reality, in the massing of it, you're looking at essentially 2/3 of the building. In the colored elevation, I think there's a little bit of poetic license by graying out the upper third floor, which actually isn't that far back. But I think in reality, if you are down on the street, you really wouldn't see the third floor. And at that point, you're looking at a mass of a building that's very consistent with the rest of the houses. You're looking at a house that's maybe 2,200 square feet of that whole total footage. So that house that you're looking at there that is the darker colored is essentially consistent with the massings of other houses. The fact that it's very fully pull into the hill, I think, is a positive. I mean, there's very little side elevation shown, especially when you consider what happens on a lot of hillside houses. I think it's a very nice design, actually. I think it's very well done, and I think it would be a real positive. I do sort of have a little bit of question about, and thinking about that, let's go over it. But in general, I think it's positively done. I think with all the fires, though, you might want to revisit all the exposed wood, but, and I think the trick-or-treaters might not like you, but other than that.
There's a brand-new provision starting July that they're going to be limited to type of species and the
whether it's
lumber.
oak or whether it's fire-treated, yeah. Okay. That's about it.
I'd like to shape my comments first, and I just to let the folks know that wrote letters, that staff does prepare copies of these letters, and this board read all the letters from homeowners in the area. and that they ran about 10-2, 10 in opposition, 2 in favor of the project. But I just want those people who said, boy, should I have gone down there, or would they read my letter? We, this board, all of us, did read your letters, and we thank staff for providing them. In this case, I'm actually persuaded that the applicant did due diligence with sensitivity to the neighborhood. And when I opened my remarks to staff, said, is this a big home? You know, could it be characterized that? Because all of the letters in opposition did characterize it as far too intense, far too large, a neighborhood of smaller homes. And I'm, again, persuaded by staff's comments that though it is a large house compared to a 2,000 square foot house, the stepped back nature inside the hillside does mitigate the size factor. So I'm sort of in support of this.
I forgot one question, Mr. Gopian, just one quick. I'm going to open the...
As many as you...
There's an area in the building that I'm not sure what is that all about. And it may just be driving more square footage or not. What is this space?
It's clear story, 3 stories.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're mentioning. That is a patio in the middle. We get light from there.
But there's no windows, there's nothing.
There's no windows on any floor.
It's open below, but...
There's no windows that open on it.
It's all glass.
And it's all solid wall.
It's all solid walls all the way up.
It's on the rear, isn't it, Mr. Gopian?
No, it's wrapped in the center.
Yeah, there will be glass here, except that our section in the floor was in a location, because this is higher than here.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
This
showing his
location-
wall. It's showing a solid wall, that's why.
That wall will stop where the dirt is, because this is about 5 to 6 foot higher than here. So first we have a wall, then we have a window. So we cut from here, so what we see is the wall, but on the top will be a window.
On the lowest floor, then? On the lowest floor? Second floor?
This is the second floor. We have 2 bedrooms.
It's going down to the 3rd floor on your section, that's why. Down to the lowest floor on your section. On your section.
I'm trying to see the plan. Okay, this is the lowest level. Then we have this level. Then we have this level.
Right.
And that is here,
Right.
which is the dirt at that point is higher than this, because the slope of the dirt goes high.
I'm looking at your section, it's 3 stories tall. Your section BB, 3 stories.
Okay, this is the stairs going from 2nd floor to the bedroom on the back 3rd floor.
So this is what he's talking.
You're showing a 3-story section.
Anyway, we have a glass there.
Okay.
Maybe the sections are not complete yet, but we have a glass there.
I have some comments. I appreciate, and this is probably the first, and I would like the staff encourage the applicants to do the following, as Mr. Hakopian and the applicant has done, to kind of give us some examples of inspiring images and kind of understand where you're coming from. I think the building is done exceptionally well. I think there are definitely areas there that has been really thought of. I'm not really sure exactly the location that the landscaping is the factor of moving the building up, but I don't have enough information of how the relationship is going to be the building in relation to the buildings and adjacent buildings. From looking at the survey, it is going to be substantially higher. So I agree with Mr. Garagos that moving this building up will be beneficial to the houses that are mostly impacted, adjacent houses. But as we move this building up, there are other homes that are above the house that may get impacted. And based on the location and the staking that that was there, and also the location of the roof with the elevation heights, I truly believe that you will have enough clearance there that it's not going to obstruct your view. It is going to be lower. It is 75 feet away. I would like to put a consideration to see if it's possible, as being considered to your neighbor, that if there is a way that we can lower this a couple of feet more to make everybody happy and come to a happy medium, that you would still have the landscaping, but you would have a little bit more clearance there. But that's a consideration. There are a couple of things that I noticed on the elevation, and I'm just commenting this as noticing some of these details that you've provided us, and it seems like you really are after a quality, detailed building. And as staff mentioned, I think I would like to see a much more consistent railing details rather than having a wood detail and a wrought iron detail and just be a lot more consistent, a lot more simpler as your images provide. Another item that I've noticed that I'm glad that you provided this, and also the image that this was brought. One of the things that, if you noticed on these, all the roofs are done very simple roof, gable roofs, and they're terminated at the edges where the rafter tails are not exposed. They're basically the roof tile wraps onto the edge of the plaster, and then there's a plaster molding. So similar to what you've provided us, and that is consistent with what the architecture is. Whereas what I'm seeing right now on this detail and having these hip roofs and providing, you're just providing a lot of roofing with much more Mediterranean traditional architecture, whereas what these are much more authentic Spanish architecture. So I would like to see that. Also, there's an area there that this is a very typical craftsman end piece that you would see on the craftsman. The ridge is extended out to carry the rafters, and so you see a lot of that in the craftsman detail, whereas you really don't see it in this type of architecture. So I think taking this through and looking at these examples, these are fantastic examples. So I think by looking at these examples and taking some pointers from these details and then incorporating it, I think it definitely will be a benefit. But other than that, I think size-wise, it is large building compared to the homes adjacent. You're the fifth largest house within the vicinity of that. But I'm glad that it's been separated. I'm glad that the garage has been placed down below and the building is separated above. And I think it will be landscaped exceptionally well. It will get covered, but and I don't think it would have as anywhere the impact of this building will be nowhere near of the impact that the adjacent building has right now in your face as you drive up. So one consideration, and I think one of the images I really liked that the neighborhood homes there. One of the, and I see this a lot around my neighborhood, which I live around Spar, Montecito Park, around the Spar area, that, you have the garage at the bottom, and then you have the landscaping and the building sitting on top. And one of the things that is really nice is that you can actually tie the structures together, whereas when you have the base, which is the garage, being masonry wall and block wall, you would get what you're getting on more of a Mediterranean home, which is the next door neighbor, which is more of a stone versus plastered building. So I think I would like to see some sort of a tying of the base with the building and somehow kind of plastering that and then covering that. I don't know if the code allows that for us to do, being that it is a retaining wall then at the bottom. Can we plaster that? Can we cover that with does it have to be an exposed split face block or whatever?
It's a retaining, are you saying the retaining wall is part of the house wall?
Well, what I'm saying is that this retaining wall that is going to be here,
Yes.
and the face of this garage and whatever else, I would like to see or these to be plastered, not split face block, more of, you would find in.
Well, by code, if I could, Mr. Chair, members of the board, the applicant is limited the way that we implement it, interpret it now. It's supposed to be, when they say a decorative stone material, it's not a plaster. That's been a standard since 1993.
What rights do we have? Can we put that as a condition and overwrite the code?
No.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. You
But
can't
this is
require.
what you're going to get. I mean,
Well, you
this
can't
is-
require the applicant to do something that would require them to go through a variance process.
No, I understand
You
that,
can
but
certainly
I'm
say
saying-
consider it, and then the applicants can say, well, do we want to go through a variance for this or not?
But wouldn't that be something that, as a staff, we can just, this is what we're saying we want to approve. We're saying that we want to approve a split-face block, which is very modern material, and we want to build a traditional, authentic architecture, 30 feet above that. It's really the...
Yeah, if I might recommend a couple of thoughts. It's not required to be split face block, but I believe that the intent behind the provision not to be stucco is that very often we see retaining walls that are stucco and they don't blend into the hillside as well as a stone or a rough-hewn block. So that's the intention behind the code. We understand that no code provision really works that well in every case, but because it is a code provision and not a guideline, in order to meet that requirement, to make it stucco, they would have to go through a variance process. So you have a couple of options. You can recommend another material that you think would be more appropriate, if there's some kind of stone facing that would be more appropriate to the style. The other thing that I did want to point out, so I'm sure you've noticed this also, is that there was an attempt to integrate it with the rest of the house by making the same material for the retaining walls at the stair as it rises up into the house. So those are some food for thought on that one.
Any thoughts?
It's kind of a random thought. There is a house in Arcadia off of Mitchell-Linda that did a really spectacular. They took essentially slumstone of different sizes. They took some of the 8/16, some of the 2/6/16, and laid them in a random format that gave it almost a rubble wall look to it that was spectacular. So if there was a way of recommending that, I would like to, they look at options where they could take a manufactured stone and lay it in an interesting way, as opposed to something that's regular.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if I may say, that first condition that the staff wrote here actually is very consistent with what you're asking for on the last page. It says here, all retaining walls, entry stair, and house foundation walls shall be approved with the decorative materials compatible with the Spanish colonial revival style. So taking in mind that split face is not something that would be something the board would want, then we could keep that in mind when we're working with the applicant.
Okay. That's fine.
So that condition is something that is addressing
Okay,
your...
so you guys are aware of what...
Oh, yes, sir. That's what we also said with the railings. If you'll note, there's another condition down here, the number 2. which-
So I would like to add the consideration of if it's possible to lower, if that is
Yes, sir.
possible. So
I-
that I would like to add as a consideration. And the detailing of the building being consistent with the handouts
Yes.
that it's given to us. So I think that's definitely important. Other than that, if there's anything else.
Oh, we're looking for a motion, Mike.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, there was one other thing that you mentioned. You mentioned something about the roofs. Was there something that I'm missing?
Yeah, what I
Finding the
have,
roof?
what I have on that item, and here's how, sort of a draft wording of that. The precedents, the architectural precedents that the applicant had provided show a more simple roof configuration with a tile wraparound detail more consistent with the style. There's a recommendation, or actually a condition, that the applicant look more closely at those details and more closely match the details that would be more consistent with the style.
That can you support
I
it?
can't support that.
You can support
Can't support
matching this to be more of what
Not
they're
necessarily,
saying?
Not necessarily. Actually, I like the tails. I like the rough trail myself.
Okay.
I mean, I would
Well,
give it as a recommendation.
My thing has
Look, your
been that if we want to be consistent with what they're providing, then that's what I would say. But it's going to be your motion. It's your motion, so that's.
Well, I mean, I
We could list it as a consideration.
I would do it as consideration, absolutely, absolutely.
In the final thing, and Chairman Malikian has been very sensitive to the neighbor on Scenic Drive with, if consideration could be given to bringing the property back. I don't, a consideration is a soft suggestion, but
Yeah, absolutely.
that is, I'm mindful of that, and I'm thankful for him for adding that, and I take it very seriously, and I hope the applicant will.
Yeah, I just think the thing on the eave, I think the tails tend to soften the mass as opposed to a plastered eave, which can sometimes make it feel bulkier. That's just my feeling.
Well, it's going to be your motion.
It's my motion, so. We'll do a couple considerations, which would be a possible plaster eave and possible gabled ends as per the provided documents.
So consider a plaster eve, and I'll work with Stephanie on that because she has
Per their provided images.
right, and then consider lowering the building height. You said
Consider lowering the building height.
and,
Not the building height, lowering the building itself. not
lowering the
height.
building. Yes,
Right.
correct. Consider lowering the building, lowering the
Did I mention the
building
three-car or not?
The what?
down.
Three-car garage?
What about it?
I was thinking somebody was saying three-car.
Sir?
Never
About the
mind.
garage.
Nothing. I was just a three-car garage. Never mind.
Okay. Well, we have the consideration lowering the building further down the hill. We have the simplifying the roof design. Like consider a plaster eave, and that was something that.
Are you going to do that? No, I can't open it, but I just say yes or no. The plastered eave or the roof lines?
I'm surprised if you're asking for plaster. You want to do just
Similar to what this is. That's my consideration. Similar to these images.
We need to get people up
Oh, no.
at the microphone.
Okay, why don't you? I just want to know if you're going to get my vote or not. So that's why I went. I'm just saying. I'm not talking about the eaves, plaster eaves. I'm talking about more of the details that.
It's a nice detail. I just don't know that we have to
the
condition it.
edges. How the tile comes to the ends, and rather than cantilevered. And these ends are fine the way that these images are. But these are all gable roofs. That everything here is all hip at the ends, and then so they come out and they become exposed. So that the detail that I'm looking at is more of Mediterranean, whereas this and this is more authentic Spanish. And so,
Only because it's a gable. These have
I understand
tails.
that, but what I'm saying is
These have tails.
We was afraid to look too much Spanish.
I like that.
These have tails, though.
Are you talking
No,
about?
I'm talking about, like, for example, like right here. This is more of a craftsman detail to me.
You want that to be like this one?
I mean, I'm looking at
Yeah,
it
no
as
problem.
I'm just saying those kinds of details, just looking at those and looking, that's all I'm.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, I thought you meant on
No,
all
no,
the
no,
overhang.
no. The overhangs,
Okay,
I'm fine.
okay.
Like, for example, like areas like, if there's ways that we can eliminate certain details like this and.
Yeah, the wood
other-
gable fascias, do a plaster fascia gable.
Yeah, I'm not talking
Yeah,
about
that's fine. Actually, I'll condition that. I'll add that in. Make you happy.
So that'll be a condition, sir?
Gable fascias
You
would
got
be
my-
plaster, not wood. Gable fascias.
Okay, so
I'm
gable,
glad we clarified that. That's-
gable faces,
Fascias
fascias,
would be
okay.
plaster, not wood.
Will,
Because there's actually tails on these examples. So.
plastered, non-wood. This is Stephanie, you understand exactly what he's referring to, okay, good. All right, so we got that, and that's not a consideration anymore, that's going to
I'm
be.
a phone call away if it's not clear.
Okay,
Actually, I'm going to put a consideration of an awning over the gable on the front. It's a consideration.
okay, consider
Awning over the front gable
awning
with wrought iron supports.
over
Since we're just throwing stuff in.
street front,
Okay.
g-
We need to
gable,
Just somebody give me
wrap
something
up.
to do.
I got
a street front gable with, what'd you say, with iron?
Wrought iron supports.
Okay, wrought
Why not?
iron supports. Okay, and so what we have, again, is lowering the building down the hill, the roof design to simplify based on the conversations that we've had here, then going back to the existing conditions as part of the staff report, we have the retaining walls that we discussed for all portions, just sort of unifying it and trying to find a retaining wall material that is going to be compatible with the architectural style. Decorative railings, we have unified those, all of them. Does that include the wood ones too?
Yes.
Including wood, so I'll just put in,
all the railings to
okay,
be more of a wrought iron.
including the wood. So you're more interested in the wrought iron rather than the, okay, including the wood.
Actually, I really like this. So it's simple and it's nice, clean.
You like the cleaner?
Whatever they provided. It's
Okay,
fine.
right, okay. So, and then the last one, you don't have a problem with the downspout, showing that on the plans or anything, and that's kind of a technical thing. So that would be our conditions. Is there any other conditions that I've heard over?
Have a motion?
And I don't see.
That's a motion?
Okay, a motion?
Add that all into motion for 2 PDR 2008-038-A. That's my motion.
And I would like to
Approved.
second that motion?
Okay, so we have Mr. Garagos is approved with these conditions, and, forgive me.
Mr. Carter.
And Mr. Carter is a second. Sorry about that. I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. And Mr. Malikian, your vote.
You haven't taken.
Oh, I haven't done the vote.
You haven't
Yes,
done the
okay,
vote.
so we have a motion, we have a second. Roll call, please. Mr. Carter.
Yes.
And Mr. Garagos.
Yes.
And Mr. Malikian.
Yes.
So that would be 3-0, approved with conditions.
Out of here.
Okay, so we have the minutes
Minutes.
of October 23rd.
Yes, we do. We do not have the minutes for November 6th.
I'm fine. I read it. I'm okay with that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine.
And since I was at this meeting, I can move approval of minutes for October 23rd, 2008.
Okay, so second.
Second?
A motion was made to approve the minutes of the 23rd of October. Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Garagos?
Yes.
Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
3-0, thank you.
And we're adjourned.
Thank you.